Hey y'all, this is Crystal. Welcome back to the channel. And today's the day. It's the end of the year. Almost. It's just December 30th. I'm recording this, but I'm ready. I'm ready to talk about some of my favorite books that I read in 2021. And I'm excited because I had a really awesome reading year, honestly. And so it was really hard to narrow these down. Well, I got it down to a favorite 15. That's the best I could do. I couldn't do a top 10. I just couldn't do it. So I have my favorite 15 here, and these will not include horror. I'm making a separate horror list because I couldn't narrow that down either. Because I read I think close to 90 horror books this year. So I'm just going to do a separate horror listing. So this list will be my favorite of basically everything else that I read for the year. And I'm excited. So let's dive in to these books that have really stuck out this year. So let's get going. First up, and they're ranked, so we're going to go from 15 to number 1. First up is An Unkindness of Ghosts by Rivers Solomon. This is a science fiction story. And we are following our main character, Aster, as she and the other remnants of humanity have fled Earth on a large ship looking for a new place to settle. And this ship, though, is organized much like the antebellum South, and meaning the sort of lower levels of the ship are full of, black and enslaved folk, and then these, skin tone gets a bit lighter as the higher that you go on the ship, and of course the power dynamics, increase to where the most powerful and most influential folks live in the really nice areas in the upper decks. This was a fantastic story. I absolutely loved it. It is oftentimes very brutal. There's some tough scenes in here. But I just loved following along with Aster as she's really struggling with trying to make things better for herself. But really, just hitting of course, wall after wall of being stuck in her situation, right? So I loved it. So it's on the list. I'm not going to try to be too long with these because otherwise this video will go on forever. And next up is already kind of a cheat because I put both books on here. But the Dreamblood Duology by NK Jemisin. First book is The Killing Moon. And then we have The Shadowed Sun. This is a wonderful fantasy story. It is a desert-based story, which I liked. It's not very typical. And, how to explain this? So, we follow basically two cities in this world that kind of end up fighting each other. But essentially, the sort of magic in here is the Dreamblood. And we have these folks that are called the Gatherers that they kind of go into people's dreams and are able to manipulate things, and they extract this dream blood, which is then used for healing purposes and all kinds of different stuff in this world. They're one of the cities actually outlaws magic, so they do not practice this sort of almost like a faith almost of this collecting this dream blood and all of that, and then one does. And there's a lot of politics in here of, power structures and things like that, and a lot of wonderful characters. It can often also be a bit brutal. NK Jemisin she doesn't always hold punches, with her characters. And I'm a Jemisin fan, and I really loved this book. So it is absolutely on the list, and I definitely recommend. Ooh. Another fantasy is up next. Memories of Ice by Steven Erikson. This is book 3 of the Malazan Book of the Fallen series that I've, slowly making my way through this year. And so far, book 3 has, I think, been my favorite. I enjoyed a lot, something about all 3 of the books that I finished. I'm still currently reading book 4. This one definitely stuck out, though. It is a lot. This is a very war-based, battle scene kind of book, you know, a lot of fighting going on. But this one had a lot of emotion in it too. Some characters, I don't want to say anything else, but it was amazing. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. I loved it. So that's 15, 14, 13. What is this? Another cheat. It's fine. Look, it's my list. I can do what I want. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything. Memories of it. Okay, next up is going to be The Dutch House by Anne Patchett. This was so good. It is like a sort of family drama. I did the audiobook narrated by Tom Hanks. It's amazing. Family story about this connection that this family has to this house that they purchased, but then, you know, once the father passes away and the kids got kicked out of the house, and I don't know. I can't even really explain it because it is so beautiful. It's just beautiful, beautifully written. The characters are fantastic, and I can't believe it's like the first Anne Patchett book I've ever read, because she has a bunch. But oh my goodness, beautiful, beautiful book. If you haven't read it yet, definitely check it out. And the audiobook's fantastic. It's so good. Very emotional. Very beautiful. Or the next one, at number, where are we at? Number 11 is another cheat, because I put the old trilogy on here because, well, I mean, you have to read all of them together. That's the Silo series. I think it's called Silo series. I don't know. I don't ever remember that. But anyway. Wool, Shift, and Dust. I read all three of these this year, and I loved this entire series. The first one, that means a great start of, you know, something has happened in the world, and humanity has to go down and live in this silo that is below ground, and they've really created their own way of living now because they can't go outside because the air is toxic. And there's some twists and turns in here, and really great characters. The characters are fantastic. The world that he created here was really wonderful. And when you get to this third book, I mean, it's so good. It is just so good. The world, I don't say too much, but read the series. It's so good. Thanks to Scott over at Book Invasion for hosting that read along, so I could finally read that series, because it was wonderful. All right, next up, we're cracking the top 10 is Dune by Frank Herbert. This is a book I finally read this year. I was always super intimidated by this one for whatever reason. You know, I don't know. Maybe because it's kind of an older book, you know. And I finally read it. I think back in February I read this. And at first I was like, okay, that was good. That was good. But did I love that? So many people love that. Did I love this book? I was like, you know, it was fine. But then, like, I kept thinking about it, and I was like, that was actually pretty good. Yeah, that was pretty wonderful, actually. So, of course, we are following the Atreides family as they are moving to, they have been sent to the desert planet Arrakis to now control the spice, because the spice is how they navigate through space. Not navigate, but how they get through space with navigators. It's the whole thing. It's the whole thing. But there's a lot of politics in here with power struggles, a lot of cool, you know, some cool fighting scenes, really good character work, a lot of family dynamics here with, you know, especially with Paul and his mom, and then little baby that comes along, and she's kind of weird. The Bene Gesserit are pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, it's Dune. It's a classic for a reason, and I finally figured out that reason this year, so loved it. Can't wait to continue on with the series in 2022. All right, number 9 is Boy's Life by Robert McCammon. I just found this hardcover at the thrift store for $1 the other day, and color me stoked. So, oh my gosh, we read this with Brad Proctor's Spinebreakers book club this year. when was that? About mid-year, I can't remember now. And this was so wonderful. Now, Robert McCammon, I think, is, usually considered a horror writer. I do not consider this a horror novel. I consider this a really wonderful coming-of-age story mixed with some sort of magical realism elements. There is a murder mystery in here, but it's not even really the forefront of the story. It's the story that threads through the whole story. But we've had these little stories in between of basically a boy and his friends and what they get up to in a summer. School is out, and what are they're friends, they're hanging out, experiencing things. And then there's something's going on with his family again, where he and his father witnessed this accident where a man his car has fallen into a what's that word? Quarry that's filled with water, and he dies, and seems a bit suspect. So I guess we do follow that through. But it was lovely. It is just really a really wonderful coming of age story, if that is a thing that you like. I really loved following this little boy. I think he's 12-ish. I'm gonna say he's 12-ish. I don't remember, but it takes place in Alabama. You got a lot of southern stuff in here in the 1960s. It's just fantastic. It's so wonderful, and I loved it so much. So yes, Boy's Life. All right, number 8. I'm gonna put Descender number 6 on here. This is a beautiful graphic novel. I reread, I think, books maybe 1, 2, 3-ish, and then I finished out the series for this one. And oh my God, this last installment of this. Now this is just by, let me say the author, Jeff Lemire, and the artwork is by Dustin Nguyen. We follow, basically it's in space, and there's all kinds of races, all kinds of worlds, but what's the word I'm looking for? Robots, artificial intelligence, however you want to call it, have kind of been outlawed in this world, and gathered up and tried to get rid of all of them because something happens in the very first book, or possibly some robots have, tried to rise up, right? I'll say that. And it just follows this entire, we figure this little boy robot has woken up after all of this has happened, and really is not sure what's going on, but he is somehow the key to something. I don't want to say what, of course, but this is so wonderful. I don't know. Sometimes you just don't know why you love something, and I think it's hard for me to put into words why I love this. But it's wonderful. It's beautifully drawn. You see these beautiful, what feel like watercolor. I mean, it's just stunning. Even look at this back. So if you were looking for a sci-fi graphic novel series, I cannot recommend this enough. It's fantastic. Glad I finally finished it out. Okay, another kind of cheat at number 7. And that is The 12 and City of Mirrors by Justin Cronin, books 2 and 3 of the Passage series. I read both of these in January, and they are still some of my favorites. I love this series. So The Passage starts out with, would you call it sort of a dystopian type of story? There's a virus that has, swept through the country, and how much I want to say? I think most people know, but it's kind of turning people into somewhat kind of like a vampire. Not like traditional vampires in that sense, but vampiric type beings. And so we follow one's kind of timeline that's sort of the start of all of this, and how this one little girl is kind of a linchpin and kind of a key to this story and things like that. And then we pick up, I think it's like 100-ish years later, where we see humanity trying to like survive in these little settlements and pockets here and there, trying to live, trying to survive, and all of that stuff, and how light comes to play because these creatures come out at night. And this is just adds more layers and depth to the story and how these characters, what they go through, what they deal with, and then the ending comes around, and I was just blown away. So I love this trilogy. I read these 2 books in 2021. I can't recommend enough. I flippin' loved it. I flippin' loved it. Gosh. Okay, next. My books are falling over here. Next is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This is the very first book I read in 2021, and it is still one of my favorites. This is, of course, Chanel Miller's story about her, gosh, what do we even say? Her experience, I guess we'll say, with being Emily Doe in the case of, what year was that? I forget the exact year now, but when Brock Turner, sexually assaulted her at a party, and didn't get much time, basically got off with nothing for it. And so she came out and sort of told her perspective, her story about all of this. You do learn a little bit about her growing up and her family and things like that, and how hard this was for her, and just the sheer the things that she went through about going through court, and the feeling, just the feelings, the depression, everything that came along with this happening to her. It is important. I think everyone should read this book. I wish everyone would, and so I will forever talk about it. Know My Name is Chanel Miller. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, next up, number 5. We're cracking the top 5. I think you guys know I loved this. Census by Jessie Ball. It's another, I guess I would call it a dystopian sort of story, but we don't really know what happened in this world to make this a dystopian story. But we follow an older man and his son. His son has Down syndrome, and we follow them as they take off on a little road trip to perform the census. Now the census seems a bit dire, a bit dark, maybe perhaps a little sinister. We don't know why the census occurs, but this is really just a story of love. This man that he has for his son, that he has for his wife who has passed away, and he himself is dying, and so he is wanting to enjoy these last moments of life. And this is a story about the people that they meet along the way, remembering memories of, his child as a kid and all this stuff. It's so special. It is so wonderful, and I loved it so much. It's a good one. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Another really special book is Pachinko by Min Jin Lee, and at number 4, this is a historical fiction that spans many generations of a family. We start off, we've got a sort of young woman who, my son, this is my life, that she has found herself pregnant and unwed, but she ends up kind of marrying this guy, and they move to Japan. Now that sort of part of the story takes place during kind of World War II, when Japan is really occupying Korea, and they really treat the Koreans like shit, to be honest. And so they're starting their lives in Japan, and like I said, it's multi-generational. We follow several generations. I think this starts in the very early 1900s and moves, I want to say, to the 1980s. So we really get a lot of family history. There's family secrets, that just tear a family apart. And this was very emotional, had me crying. Beautifully written. Oh my God, I can't tell you enough how wonderfully written this book is. It is gorgeous. It's well worth your time. Slightly chunky, but well worth your time. Absolutely stunning. Pachinko, Min Jin Lee. Can't recommend it enough. We're cracking the top 3. Can you guess? All right, I've got books falling. One moment, please. Okay, number 3 is Revelator by Daryl Gregory. This was a surprise hit for me, but man, I loved this book. And again, it's kind of another family story through a few generations. But this takes place in the Smoky Mountain area. Well, it's not Smoky Mountain National Park yet, but it's in the Cades Cove area, Tennessee mountains, the 1930s. We meet a young girl named Stella as she is being basically dropped off at her grandmother's house by her dad. Times are tough, you know, so he's like, I need to go look for some work, and you're gonna have to live with grandma for a while. Now, in her sort of adventures of living now, because they were living in Chicago, so this is a real change of pace for her living, basically in the mountains. And she goes exploring, and back up on the mountain behind grandmother's house, there's what looks like a little church here. She walks in. Okay, there's pews. Yeah, it looks like a church to me, right? And then she goes towards the back behind the sort of the pulpit area. There's stairways that lead down. Okay, that's a little strange. What we find out is this family basically has their own god, and he is the god in the mountain, and they have sort of affectionately call him Ghost Daddy. And women of this family have a special connection to Ghost Daddy. They sort of commune with him and communicate and relay these communications to the family, to where really their own religion has formed around this being. And Stella, we also see her as she's grown up a bit, so the 1940s timeline. She's sort of a young adult, 18, 19 or so. And she has sort of distanced herself from her grandmother and the family and Ghost Daddy himself, because perhaps Ghost Daddy is a bit more sinister than believed, and maybe she needs to put a stop to all this that's going on. This is so good. It's just, I tell you, it was a surprise hit, and oh my god, I now have gone down this rabbit hole of wanting to read all of Daryl Gregory's books. I got one for Christmas, and I can't wait to read it. I'm just, why have I not read this man's books? Because he has quite a bit. I don't know what rock I was sleeping under, but anyway, this definitely has, it's got a historical fiction feel mixed with some, spooky elements. There are definitely some sort of horror elements here, with some folk horror, with this sort of old-timey religion, and then of course these good old family secrets. And oh, I loved it. I loved it so much. Will forever recommend it. All right, number 2, another book I didn't really expect to love so much, but I did. The new and improved Romie Futch by Julia Elliott. This is a strange story. It really, when I think about this, I was like, this reads like a Coen Brothers movie. So if you're a Coen Brothers fan, maybe that appeals to you. We follow a man named Romie Futch. Best character name ever. Just get that out of the way. And he's a middle-aged man, and he's divorced. He drinks a lot, has drugs. He's just, he's a taxidermist, but he sometimes does his work, sometimes not. He's just a bit down and out. He's a bit down and out. And so he sees this ad for sort of a medical experiment. And he's like, maybe this will help me get my ex-wife back, because he really loves her and really regrets that it didn't work out for them, So he signs up, and this medical experiment is essentially to make him smarter. There's something that they do, he and this other sort of gaggle of guys that sign up for this experiment. And so once that's over and he kind of comes back to his life, and he is much smarter, but does it help? Does it help his life? He becomes an artist with his taxidermy. There's this wild boar hunt. I mean, it is zany. It is bizarre. weird, and I flippin' loved it. I can't even really explain it all that well because there's a lot going on in here, and I just fell in love with Romie Futch. He is an anti-hero, you know, kind of reminds you of like the dude, you know, from The Big Lebowski. Like, it is what it is, and he is who he is, and you just love him for it. You just love him for it. You fell in love with Romie Futch, and oh God. Number 2, I loved it. I don't even know what else to say about it because I'm chuckling thinking about this book because it's funny too. So, Romie Futch, loved it. And I think number 1 will probably not be a surprise when it's Betty by Tiffany McDaniel. This book is so good. It is so good. It will break your heart, break it again, stomp on it, break it again, make you cry. You're gonna cry some more probably. Then you're gonna like ugly cry. Then you're gonna cry some more. But it's so good. This is kind of this is a story that's based on the author's mother, whose name is Betty, and many of the family members in here are based off true, you know, members of her family, real members of her family, I should say. And what do I say about Betty? It's so good. This takes place in, I think, the 1950s. I think it is when we pick up 50s or early 60s. I forget, but anyway, we basically are following Betty, and she is a mixed race kid. Her mom is a white lady, and her dad is a Cherokee man. They have several kids. She has a few older siblings, a few younger siblings. They're growing up in Ohio. They're dirt poor, don't have much going on. Dad's trying his best. Her mom has some serious mental issues of her own. This is a story of generational trauma, race, sexism really mentioned. It's the time period, 60s, right? Family secrets again in this, and really the awful, you know, what family secrets can do to a family. I think this is the crux of this book, is how dangerous family secrets can be. And again, that generational trauma. It is heartbreaking. Honestly, there's a lot of sad shit in here. There's a lot that goes on with this family. Some of the scenes I think about, and I just, oh God, it's like a gut punch. But it's so wonderfully written. You know, Tiffany McDaniel writes about these sometimes really atrocious, god-awful things, but she writes them in a way that is like a punch in the face. It hits you with such power that she has strung these words together to make such a beautiful sentence, you know. I was blown away by the lyrical writing in this. The characters were wonderfully developed. It's just beautiful all around. But I just know that this is not easy to read. It's not, but it is so beautiful that I wish she would get, you know, if you haven't read it yet, give it a try, give it a go and see what you think, because it's just so stunningly beautiful. Even with all the tragedy, it's beautiful. So that's number 1. I don't think that's a surprise, but I had a wonderful reading year. This is a long video, and I do apologize, but if you made it this far, thanks so much. I'd love to know, are any of these your favorites on your 2021 reading list, or what was your favorite? Did you have what's your top 5? Let me know. And thanks so much for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me in 2021 as I started this, sort of bookish journey here on the channel. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to 2022. If 2021 is any, what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, futuristic lookings into how 2022 will be, I think it's going to be another good year. So thanks for watching, spending some time with me. I'll catch you in the next one where I'll talk about my favorite horror books. All right? Thanks. Bye.